Light the beam, because it's time for Nerdy for 30, the podcast where we talk about nerdy-ish movies for 30-ish minutes. My name is Kevin Bauer, a.k.a. The Critic's Choice. With me, as always, the people's champ, Tim Cack.
If you feel it, chase it, baby.
If you feel it, chase it. And today, we are talking about When Harry Met Sally. That is back in vogue now, apparently. You know, Hellman's brought him back. Sydney Sweeney's having what Meg Ryan had, and here we are. We're back.
What? Wait, is that why we're doing it? Are they rebooting it or something?
They didn't reboot it. Did you see the Super Bowl ad? They did the Super Bowl ad on Sunday.
No, I wasn't paying attention to the ad.
Hey, you know, it's all right. They did a Super Bowl ad where it was like Hellman's. Hellman's has also been hyping this. It's that thing where like Super Bowl ads are getting trailers now. So we knew in advance. We were able to plan to watch this in advance because Hellman's had shown their hand that they had gotten Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan back together for something. And what the fuck else are you going to get back together for? So, yeah, they did that. Sydney Sweeney's there. It's them and Cats. So the premise of this ad is that they're sitting there in Cat's Deli again, and they're eating the sandwich again. And I think Billy Crystal even says, well, here we are again. And, you know, Meg Ryan takes a bite of the sandwich. This I was personally offended by. As a massive fan of Cat's Deli, you know how much Cats means to me. You took me there for the first time.
Yes, we have to talk about Cat's Deli as just an entity.
Let's do a segue real quick into Cats.
A segue into Cats. Cats is a magical, quintessential New York experience that is definitely overpriced, but I think delivers on what you want.
Yeah,
you know?
100%. Especially if you're a tourist and you're coming into town. Like, look, this is a predatory city. There's a lot of shit here that's designed to separate tourists from their money. Occasionally, you will find something that is in the tourist wheelhouse, but actually delivers. One of my favorites is the Rum House bar in Times Square. Actually a good bar. That's where I'll like take people and meet them if they're going to be coming into town to see shows. I'll take them to the Rum House. Cats is one of those things. Going there for us, it's expensive because I go a few times a year. If you're a tourist and you're coming in once every couple of years, that is a fucking bargain for the pastrami that you're about to eat.
It's phenomenal. And you get the whole experience, you know? They have like a weird ticketing system where you get a piece of paper and you pay when you leave. And then you go up to different people with your piece of paper. And there's a bunch of different lines, which I think people have a lot of confusing times with. But a lot of New York staples have just complicated line systems. You get in line for the meat guy. You get a little taste of the meat. You get a little, you know, mustard. You get your oh my gosh, latkes. You get a little, I like a little like chocolate, what do they call it? Those, oh my gosh.
Egg cream. Yeah, dude.
Little egg cream. The matzo ball soup's good. I mean, everything there is really good.
It's awesome. Also great for the holidays. That was our Thanksgiving restaurant for 2023 and 24, our Christmas Eve restaurant for 2023 as well. Look,
how's the crowd
Cats fucking delivers. Honestly, not bad. They seated us in the back room, which was a little drafty just because it's an annex, but like it's incredible to see how much literal depth that place has. And I mean, people shy away from the table service at Cats. If you're going to Cats and you're a little bit thrown off by the whole like ordering at the counter thing, just go get table service. It's fine. Nobody's gonna like fault you for it. Honestly, if you're trying to find a table after ordering at the counters, it's like a knife fight out there. It's insane. People are cutting in front of people. People are doing the shit like in Philly where they put a traffic cone down to hold their parking space. It's insane. Just go to the back. You know, if you're stressed out about that at all, if you're with a group, go to the back. It's great.
That is a fun hack. Like the front is fun. It's fun to like be looking for a table. It's fun to have to get in all the lines. That feels like the Cats experience. But if you're right, overwhelmed, you just go to the back, look for the table service. They've got a surprising number of tables back there. And I feel like I've always been able to get one. They were giving out too many tips, but there's a lot of bad tips. I mean, I saw this guy, I forget what chef it was. Some chef on Instagram was like talking about, oh yeah, you go to Cats. I've got all the inside tips for you, you know? And he's like, you know, you want the best cuts of meat. You want the deli guy to do a good job. Tip them generously. And it's like, that's not a tip. That's not.
I mean,
advice.
it literally is.
Throw more money at the. Yeah, exactly. Your advice being you should tip a lot isn't a tip. It's not a hack to be like, well, if you spend more money, you may or may not get better service.
Tim, I got a hotel hack I got to drop on you. If you want the best bellboy service you've ever had in your life, slide that guy a $5.
I remember going out to we used to go watch like the UFC games in high school. We'd go to like Buffalo Wild Wings or something.
Oh my God, yeah.
And we were all waiting for wing. And that's like the big thing is you go there, it takes like 3 hours, at least you take 3 hours because they allocate like 20 minutes per fight. They never go 20 minutes. So you've got a lot of time where you're just sitting around hanging out and the kitchen's backed up. And we were all waiting on stuff. And my buddy just kept getting wings like right away. He kept ordering stuff. He'd get it immediately, all these things. And it's like, why? And we're in high school. I'm just like, what's going on? The waitress just seems very interested in him. And he's like, I gave her a 20 before we sat down and said, take care of us. And I was like,
my God.
That's the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen. And this was like, we're like, 17, 16, and he was like tipping and he had like his girlfriend with him and I was like, damn, this is a cool dude. This is a cool guy.
Oh,
I'm so jealous of that.
That rules. Somebody took care of us. Shout out. We talk about Ben on this pod a lot. It's deserved. Great dude. Ben, shout out, man. He was Max Nurma's a regional chain, or was that a chain across the whole country? Did you ever hear about a Max Nurma's?
No. I don't know what that is.
Classic, just kind of like American food place. Had great like desserts and sundaes and stuff too. But anything you want, it's like a couple steps up from like a Perkins pancakes. But Ben was working in the kitchen there for a while, and one night, this is the most balling you can do when you're in high school. One night he invited a couple of us to come for dinner, and he's like, "I got you," and because he knew everybody there and he was cashing in like some free food credits he gets for working into the kitchen, he just comped the whole meal for us. And everybody was treating us like kings because it's just his friends that he works with, like bringing the food out and stuff. And it was the shit, dude. It rules. That kind of stuff's a blast.
Dude,
Low stakes high school fun.
There's nothing that feels cooler than knowing somebody.
I know.
Just anytime someone can like be like, I got you. That's like the best thing ever. It feels incredible. You feel like a rock star. And like all you're doing is getting your fries a little early or, getting your drink bill covered a little bit, a couple bucks off the drink bill, but it still feels incredible.
Oh man, yeah, dude. We need to be abusing that more for this podcast. We need to be using the fact that we have a platform to just get some of the pastrami guys from Cats as guests on the pod. I want to hear their takes. I'm sure they're interesting.
The Cats guys.
Yeah, just wherever we want to become locals, we just book everybody that works there.
Yes, we should have a pod.
Dominica.
We should have a pod called like Local Networking, and it's just inviting people on that own places we want to go to. And it's just like, hey man, can you get us a seat at this? Like we just find the fanciest restaurants. Yeah, exactly. We're like, hey man, we'd really love to eat at this restaurant. Do you think you could get us in? And that's the whole pod.
Oh man, I don't hate it, Tim. I don't hate it. So we've established how much we love Cats.
Cats is great. It's worth it.
Scene. Which is why I was personally offended in the Super Bowl commercial. It starts off, the premise of it is that they get their food delivered to the table. Meg Ryan takes a bite. Billy Crystal asks, how is it? She says, what are you doing? Why would Cats sign off on her taking a bite of the sandwich and saying it's fine? Now, she did not get the pastrami. This is not a pastrami. She did not get the Reuben. This is not a sandwich that Cats is signing off on. All I saw was lettuce and tomatoes, Tim.
Lettuce and tomatoes. It's not even a BLT.
Didn't he? For all I saw, it was an LT on white, man. And then
an LT on white.
Of course, she pulls out the Hellman's mayonnaise and squirts that on, and then she has a fake orgasm, or I guess theoretically a real orgasm.
She could
in front of everybody because the conversation was not about faking it. She just takes one bite of that Hellman's. The waterworks come on, but so she does the whole thing. It's a truncated version for the Super Bowl. And then they cut to another table over. And instead of that woman who's probably passed by this point, rust in power, it's Sydney Sweeney. And Sydney Sweeney
Rob Reiner's mom. That was Rob Reiner's mom.
Was it? Oh, man. Wow.
Isn't that fun?
Dang.
But then it's Sydney Sweeney when it's like, huh? Like, why is Sydney Sweeney even there? Honestly, if she's not going to be faking an orgasm in Cats, what else is she representing for mayonnaise? What does she do for mayonnaise? Is she moving a lot of mayonnaise?
No, man. She's white. Like
she's white. You want to put her on everything?
Quintessentially white product. Sydney Sweeney for milk. Well, that's got its own sexual connotations that are a little more
Sydney Sweeney, Wonder Bread.
But it is funny how Jack McBrayer for Wonder Bread. It is kind of funny how there was like a People magazine thing. I was looking up the ad, and there's like a People magazine interview, or like Us or one of those, where Meg Ryan was quoted as saying that she thought it was really brave of Sydney Sweeney to agree to be in that ad and like take on that iconic line. And it's like, what are you fucking talking about? And like the publication is like, it's like, you know, she very well could be the Meg Ryan of her time. And it's like, what are we fucking doing? We're talking about her like she's a veteran. Like, we're talking about Sydney Sweeney like she's a firefighter right now.
Yeah. Not to diminish what she does, but she's mostly known for being hot. Whereas
I'm fully comfortable diminishing any actor. I don't think any actor has ever. Maybe the only brave acting choice I've ever seen. The only brave thing I've ever seen is half the shit that Barry Keoghan was doing in Saltburn. I was like, oh damn, yeah, you can lose your audience for this. Anything else, no.
Yeah, how deep did she have to go to say I'll have what she's having?
I'll have what she's having
in Cat's Deli. Boy. Half a day of work.
Jesus.
Yeah. I do think it makes me think of 2 points. One, the line "I'll have what she's having" is iconic.
It's incredible.
It's incredible. In the movie, it's so good. And you hear it and you're like, I'm always thinking like this has been overplayed. People have made these jokes before. This is now, honestly, everything with this movie now, this is like the North Star for so many rom-coms that have come out since then. And this, I'll have what she's having. It's like people have said it a bunch. It's in Regal commercials. Like I've heard this line so much, but it's still, the delivery is perfect. And it's such a good, they cut to it correctly and it really hits. And I was sitting there thinking, man, that is a hell of a line. That is an iconic line, as iconic as they come. With great power comes great responsibility. I'll have what she's having. Boom, boom. That's it. Nothing else.
It's so fucking good. It's that injection of like old Hollywood humor too.
Yes.
You know, like it kind of feels descended from the Catskills comics days, which is really fun. Like it feels like something that wouldn't be that out of place in a Mel Brooks movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a perfect fucking button. That's something that's so interesting with this movie in general is that like, I think you really do get something from the fact that they have Billy Crystal. I mean, arguably at the height of his powers, basically just doing stand-up. His character is just trying out stand-up bits. It's Seinfeld without the clips where he's at the clubs.
Yes. He is so fun in this and so good. And I think comparing Sydney Sweeney to Meg Ryan is not accurate because Meg Ryan has it. She has it. Mm-hmm. She has it in spades in this movie. I'm hanging on her every word. I want her to be happy. I'm just enjoying spending a lot of time with them. And I'm having a great time with Billy Crystal too, just working on his stand-up. And Meg Ryan is so capturing. Just, they're incredible. They're so fun together. I really, really love them together.
Oh, it rocks. The entire arc of their relationship is great. Like, you really truly believe that they care for each other, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah, both of them have such an amazing, undeniable screen presence. This is one of those movies where every single part of it is good. Like the writing is good, the acting is good, the directing is good, the soundtrack is good. This is just a fucking great movie.
Yeah. And to your like kind of slapstick point with the cutaway for that line, I'll have what she's having. That joke, now that I'm thinking about it, really stands out from all the other jokes in this.
Mm-hmm.
like they don't have jokes like that. They'll do bits where somebody leaves a scene and the people that are still there like keep talking. They'll do that
Yeah.
with the other couples, which is very fun and very cute. But that one, they just straight cut to somebody else that we've never seen before, and they deliver a line. That's so old school and slapsticky. It's out of nowhere. Whereas the majority of the comedy in this is like these beautiful, yeah, Seinfeld-esque, just nonsense, nothing conversations that are so fun, and they pull them off because they both have great chemistry together. And you just believe that they're really, friends and really in a relationship, because this is what real relationships are like, or just talking nonsense and doing bits together. Like, what else is there to do? You just walk around like talking to each other, and most of the time you're talking about nothing. So it's really great, and it captures that in a way that, I don't know if rom-coms necessarily before this captured it, and certainly not all rom-coms are still trying to do that. But
oh, for sure. What do you think? I wanted to ask what you thought of, like, obviously they're both very gifted actors. I wanted to ask what you thought of the plausibility of Meg Ryan going for Billy Crystal, because, Billy Crystal's an interesting guy because he's not the most conventionally attractive person. This is a very distinct looking man, but there is a charm about him that is undeniable.
He is a hero of mine purely because, he represents the average big forehead man. And people don't get cast in roles like that anymore, unless it's a joke. But it doesn't seem as insane as, I don't know, maybe it's just 'cause I've seen it so many times. It doesn't seem completely insane. And he carries himself with so much confidence that his character's confidence somehow levels the playing field, where she is physically out of his league, but confidence wise, he brings more to the table than she does. Like, she's trying to keep up with his confidence and the way he talks about things. And so I think it balances out in that way. I mean, I feel like we'd need somebody else's opinion on his actual hotness, but just
no, we got this.
My life is not better if I look like Billy Crystal. I don't think so. That's usually my barometer.
First of all, that's an incredible barometer. I don't want to skip past that too quickly.
That's the right way to do it.
Second of all, he's like this perfect example where if you just look at a picture of him, you're like, I don't know, I don't see it. But then as soon as you see him in motion and you see the way he carries himself, Lauren and I were talking about this. We kind of broke it down to this. I think Billy Crystal specifically in this movie as Harry is George Costanza if he was at peace with himself. I feel like the two of them run into similar situations and approach them completely differently. Like, if you look at like the classic George Costanza line of like, I was in a pool, Billy Crystal would just be like, I was in a pool. Like, it is what it is. He's so at peace with who he is and how life works, and that is what it is, that it's like addictive. You're just so into this perspective, and it makes so much sense.
I love it. I think initially watching it, it seems like he is the one guiding her through this, and he just knows so much more than her. But having seen it a few times now, I really think it's more that these are both neurotic people. And her neuroticism kind of shows itself in a different way than his, whereas his is like very controlling, very rules. He's like, I've got rules for everything. Men and women cannot be friends. This cannot happen because then of this, and then this of this. And he just has like a structure that he adheres to. And then he's confidently singing karaoke in like a store, and his ex walks in and he just completely melts down, like it cracks like his robot exterior, and you get to see him like not being able to process this, like he is quipping in like an avoidance way as opposed to like addressing what's actually going on with him, it seems like.
Yeah, it's interesting too with that, where like he seems to be more upfront with stuff. Like when they both go through similar massive breakups at the same time, they're talking on the phone. He is so upfront with how sad he's feeling, and she's really helping him through that. But she's continuously saying like, no, you know what? I'm good. I'm good. I don't miss him. I don't miss him. I miss the idea of him, all that. And then when she sees that he's moved on, that's her time to crumble. And that's when everything hits.
Mm.
So I do think it's interesting that they both kind of have opposite perspectives on that too, where he got it out of the way, but he had to really work through it. And she kind of had it more pent up and more bottled up, and then it hit. And that's another thing it does that's so great, is like how realistically it portrays how you feel about moving on from these things, and how complicated, messy relationships get in adulthood. And man, it's fascinating. It's interesting to keep watching this movie over time and understand it better now, having friends who have gone through divorces and things like that. And like, I'm sure it's only going to get more and more relevant as we keep going.
Yeah. That I found a lot of what Billy Crystal was saying incredibly relatable, not in a way where I 100% agree with it, but in a way where I've had all those similar thoughts, and I've talked to other guys about the same stuff. And it's like, I think there is like it is at least like scraping reality and coming up with it's like an interpretation of real things that are happening in relationships. And I felt very seen in that. Very like, and simultaneously like, oh yeah, no, this isn't accurate necessarily, but I mean, there are definitely elements of this thing that, like, the men and women can't be friends thing is a fascinating conversation. And I generally agree-ish, I do think that there is there is like a component of like attraction that if you find somebody and you really get along and you're attracted to them, why would you not try to date them? That's kind of what I've always thought. Like, why would you not give it a shot? And I feel like that's the advice I would give people, is like, pull the trigger more, like, what do you mean? You're trying to preserve these friendships. I'll tell you what, it's real easy to not be friends with somebody. It's easy to move on. You think you're best friends with this person. You are not. You are not as close to these people as you think you are. It's going to be, you move. You're not going to see them anymore. You're not as close as you were. People drift apart. Life just happens.
People in life are seasons.
Yes. Why would you not just jump at an opportunity like that comes your way, I guess? But at the same time, also, it's very possible to have relationships with women that are not romantic at all. So,
yeah,
I guess it depends.
I do think it's interesting that, like, one of the lines that really stood out to me was when Meg Ryan was talking to her then partner after she was like, oh, thank God he didn't see me with Harry, and was asking, like, they were talking about do you think men and women can be friends? And she asks him, do you have any female friends? And he says, no, but I'll get some if they make you feel better. But like how quickly he was like, no, I don't, really stood out to me, because it is something that I've thought about, where like I have definitely, like, as time has gone on, I was younger, like middle school, high school, definitely used to have like a lot of female friends, in college and after college doing comedy and stuff out here too, had a lot of female friends. And I have noticed that I haven't kept, like, the people that I have kept in touch with the most over the years, like for one reason or another, it has tended to be the men that I was friends with, to the point now where it's like I'm not very frequently in contact with most of those friends who are women. And it's interesting to me, because obviously it wasn't a conscious decision in any way, shape, or form. But I think it's those like little, some of it's probably sociological. Some of it is probably like leaning on, everybody has inherent biases. It's probably leaning on some of that too. But it's just interesting how there does seem to be like a sort of regression to like a gender essentialist mean. Maybe that's going to die with millennials, because we're, like the younger generations are seem to be more like naturally like attuned with gender fluidity and all that. But it's interesting to me that this has happened. And it's definitely something I've clocked and been like, I don't love this. I don't love that this happened. So
yes,
got to figure out why that happened.
Hypothetically, let's say you're dating somebody and or you're in a relationship with somebody and they come home and they're texting and you're like, who are you texting? And they're like, I met someone at the gym. And they're the opposite sex. They look better than you do. And they're just texting each other all the time. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because my gut is going to be like, what the fuck is this? You know, that could 100% be platonic. But I do think there is also this element where you're like, you know, maybe it's a protective thing or like an insecurity thing, or you're right. Maybe this is something that just like won't, you know, happen anymore, you know, like when we're all in the future, like polysexual and just, you know, being with whoever all the time. I don't know. I feel like could not do that. I'm too jealous a person.
Really?
I'm too locked in. Be polysexual.
Yeah. well, like, I mean, like that in and of itself, like that's not a red flag, like just meeting a random person. But I think that also kind of depends on I've been in relationships where that alone would have been the red flag. So I think it depends on the relationship itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, it kind of depends. Right now wouldn't be threatened in the slightest. You know, if it started becoming a trend, if it starts being a thing where it's like your partner's getting back really late, like excessively late at night, or like the next morning, and it's like, where were you? And it's like, oh, I was with my gym friend. That's a conversation at least. It also depends in the scenario whether or not I look like Billy Crystal, and then separately whether I have Billy Crystal swag.
That's true. I don't know if either of us have the confidence and swag of Billy Crystal, in which case I wouldn't be worried about anything.
I'm telling you, BCE, Billy Crystal energy. We had it wrong with Pete Davidson. He did not have BCE.
Kevin, I'm wondering, you know, I've probably spent most of my life dating or being single, whereas I feel like you have been in a relationship for a very long time, Kev.
It is kind of crazy when you think about the timing. Yeah.
Do you relate to any of the dating stuff happening in this movie? Or did you just did you just miss it? Is it because there's the people where it does seem like some of these conversations are not happening anymore, where it's like, well, at least you'd be married. Like you marry him for 6 months and he died. Well, at least you'd be married. Like I haven't met anyone my age that talks like that.
Yeah.
But they do talk about like the relationship things and dating and all that weirdness. And like, I don't know, does any part of you resonate with that? Or you're just like, The
part that resonated the most was with when Carrie Fisher and the mustache guy were like, promise me I'll never have to be back out there again. Definitely was
so cute.
The highlight. I remember, I mean, obviously like, you know, in like college, in high school, like I remember it. It was not always an easy path. So that was its own fun time. That is interesting that I don't necessarily think that people are like so locked in on marriage specifically anymore. I mean, it just doesn't seem to hold the same prevalence that it did back then. It's one of those things too, where it's like, sometimes this will happen with a comedy where there will be a line in there and it's really hard to parse whether it was dry humor, like whether it was just delivered super dry and would have gotten a laugh at the time, or whether it was genuinely a belief of the time. There's a line where Sally says, the clock doesn't really start ticking until you're 36. I don't know contextually. I don't know if she's talking about like, you know, the clock of your viability as a marriage prospect, or if she's talking about, you know, the literal like biological clock, I guess still figurative biological clock. I interpreted it as though she was talking about her biological clock. 36 in the 80s, shockingly far back. Like I would have assumed that back then they would have considered the biological clock closer to the early 30s, considering the fact that, like, you know, like with everything, I think it's anything over like 26 is considered a geriatric pregnancy. Maybe we know too much about it now where we're like, actually 36 is still kind of pushing it.
I like this pod is just us like talking about dating hypotheticals and geriatric pregnancies. Like we know anything about any of this.
Oh my God. Do we rename this women's issues with Kevin and Tim?
I was surprised by that too, because for whatever reason, I feel like that date has like moved out a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess when I picture this is in 1989, and I was picturing they're like, past 28, you're dead. You know, like you might as well roll in a ditch. You're an old maid. But like, I guess that's too old fashioned, and maybe this idea isn't necessarily resonating with us as dudes. So we just don't. We're not clocking it in the same way that, you know, women are.
I mean, I'm just worried. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, look. That's what I'm saying. Maybe we know too much. It's like, oh God, I don't want anybody to have any complications. You know, we all know risks of like DNA strands being passed over with modifications. It's just harder. It's just harder, Tim. It's harder.
Let's talk about all the difficulties with pregnancies.
I don't want to put anybody off. I'm not saying shit. I'm not saying shit, Tim.
All right, Kevin, after you've offended every woman listener we have, she probably stopped listening. So
I know
we're going to move on. I had 3 rapid fire thoughts on this movie that stood out to me.
Hit me.
One, they talk about how this movie is like a romance over time, but there's 2 big time skips. And then the majority of the movie takes place in like less than a year,
which is kind of crazy. Like it does kind of fuck with your perception of the movie.
Where you're like, oh, this is a decades long romance. And it's like, it's not. They met once, they met again. Then 5 years later, they became friends and were friends for about a year before they ended up hooking up. So that stood out to me.
So I want to reshoot the earlier scenes, the college scenes in this movie with the kid that played Billy Crystal in the Saturday Night Live movie. Because he was lights out. He was so good. And then for the Meg Ryan part, you need someone who can be a young Meg Ryan.
Sweeney.
Let's do Sydney Sweeney, my man.
Just run this whole thing back.
My man.
Dude, I will say something Sydney Sweeney cannot do is Meg Ryan, physical comedy genius. I didn't realize it.
She's
not enough credit. The tissue box scene, her tissue work is top tier. And Billy preps it for her, and then she's just pulling out all these tissues and throwing them around. I mean, it's really the choreography for those is so good and so incredible. And her with the tree is so good. And honestly, the 2 of them with the tree and with the rugs, it's just, they're always doing some sort of a weird activity together, and it works for me.
It's great. She's incredible. From the first time in Top Gun, you see her in the bar and she does the thing with Goose of like, take me to bed or lose me forever. It's like every man in the world fell in love with her. She's fun. She's charismatic. She's playful. It's like she's the fucking best, dude. Meg Ryan,
that's a hell of a line too.
Oh, it's awesome.
Speaking of lines, they watch Casablanca in this, and they go out of their way to say that's the best last line to any movie ever. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Then this movie's last line is them talking about putting chocolate sauce on the side of a cake because if you put it on, it'll get too soggy. It's nothing. And I was wondering how intentional that is. I got to think that's intentional. They talk about how important the last line of this movie is. And then the end of this movie, the movie ends. And then it just cuts to the vignette of them. And they are talking about nothing. They're talking about a cake, a coconut cake, and the sauce on the side. And it gets soggy. And that was it. And then the movie ends. Like there's no final line. It just kind of meanders in the same way the movie has. And I thought that is like a really interesting point about relationships and chemistry with people and how kind of mundane all of these things are. And there is no last line. There is no perfect thing. It just kind of keeps going. And I thought that was cute.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's no more or less important than anything else they talked about. It's so fun.
Exactly.
God damn. What a great movie, dude. This is great. I'm glad we're focused on great movies now because this is so fun.
This is a banger, dude. Oh, and Billy Crystal's, monologue to her at the end, top tier, I think. That's a top tier romance monologue. Getting her back monologue, that's it. It's on the top.
Oh, it fucking rips. It's so goddamn good.
Yeah.
I did think of one final thing. We only have a minute left, but did want to bring up there's an interesting thing about how this movie really quietly showcases how when women tend to talk about their feelings, they tend to do it face to face. When men tend to talk about their feelings, they need something else to look at because they can't look each other in the eye and talk about the feelings. They cut from the lunch scene with Carrie Fisher and Meg Ryan to Billy Crystal and the guy who looks, how does he live in New York? I've never seen someone who looks more like a Chicagoan at the game. It's insane. Super, super well done. Loved it. Listener, love you. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back here again with the opposite of this movie, Iron Man from 2008. We'll see you then. Until then, stay nerdy, everybody. Bye.
Stay nerdy. Bye.
Where would you put the chocolate sauce on a coconut cake?